What is up, everybody, and welcome back to another episode of Shooting the Shit Uncensored. I am your host, the bald, the bearded, the beautiful Piers Austin, and we are brought to you by Multi-Continental Wrestling Rewind, Multi-Continental Wrestling Alliance on Facebook and on YouTube. And you can also find us on Instagram, Twitter, everywhere. We are currently being viewed on Twitch, Facebook, and YouTube, wherever you are seeing us, wherever you are finding us. As long as you are finding us, you are here, and we are grateful to have you on board with us this evening. For tonight, I have a very, very, very special show for you guys planned. I have two guests. That's right. Not one, two. I was going to have three, but we'll go with two, baby, two. But anyway, guys, I have Jay Stevens and Joel Bateman from the wrestling promotion in Australia, Deathmatch Downunder. Now, as soon as I saw these guys on Twitter, I just reached out to them immediately because I wanted to bring them on the show. I wanted to hear about their story. I wanted to hear about their product. Everybody knows I'm a huge wrestling mark. Well, because I do like two different wrestling podcasts. That's why you know I'm a fucking wrestling mark. But I'm also a huge deathmatch wrestling mark, and I really want to know what these guys have got planned. I really can't wait to see what they're actually putting out, because I'm hoping and I know it's going to be an amazing product. But guys, before I get into the show, we have Colby in the crowd. Thank you very much for tuning in, brother. But guys, before I get started any further, I do want to take a quick moment to thank the sponsors, the people that pay us, the people that help us keep the lights on here in the Austin household. And that first one is A-Rock Designs. Ladies and gentlemen, A-Rock Designs is that company you are seeing all over the wrestling Facebook groups, Facebook pages, Instagram posts. People, if you want to get your hands on some A-Rock Designs, they make some amazing cups, hoodies, keychains, t-shirts, you name it, they make it. They made me this amazing CM Punk tumbler, which I absolutely love. It's amazing, keeps my drinks cold, but I have not put beer in it yet. Not because I don't like beer, I love beer, but I just haven't had the, I just can't bring myself to put a beer in a CM Punk cup. But anyway, guys, I digress. My next sponsor is Signal Studios. If you are an independent professional wrestler and you want to get some new entrance music, something fly, something fresh, hit up my boy Rafi from Signal Studios, and he can hook you up no matter where you are in the world. He can mix, master, produce that bitch, and send it straight out to anywhere, anytime. You name it, he can do it. Or if you're a local musician and you're in Sydney, Australia, you want a place to rehearse, a place to record, even if you're just someone who's like learning the guitar and you want to go and record something, Signal Studios has the most comfortable rehearsal space. It is seriously amazing there, guys. I love it. Every time I go in there, I'm always trying to touch a guitar and play it really badly. But guys, go in there, check it out. It's an amazing spot, and it'll get your creative juices flowing. But guys, without further ado, they've been waiting patiently in the back. I'm going to bring them out. My guests this evening from Deathmatch Downunder, Jay Stevens and Joel Bateman. Gentlemen, thank you for joining me.
Good evening. I was going to say, yeah, we did have a third person who was going to jump in, but I think the three of us make up a pretty good triple threat, if I do say so myself.
Mate, I definitely do.
I'd be on this side.
I can see the CCW title hanging over your right shoulder, so I think we're in good hands tonight.
Mate, I know a thing or two about deathmatch wrestling, but guys, before we get into it, we just want to check out some of the people we got in the crowd. We got Matthew Bruce, who's watching. Thanks for tuning in. We got Facebook user saying, "Big homie, what's good?" Ohio is in the house.
Jesus, what time is it in Ohio?
It must be pretty good. It's your boy, Heel Panda God. Thank you for tuning in. But guys, look, what's been going on, man? Deathmatch Downunder. Like, how did this come to be? As a huge Deathmatch fan, I am like when I saw the Deathmatch Downunder video, I was just like, what the fuck? This is in Australia? What? How? When? Guys, give me the 411.
When is kind of Deathmatch has been in Australian wrestling since Australian wrestling's been Australian wrestling, but this is kind of the first time that a company's put it at the front and kind of led with it. A lot of companies will do one or two death matches a year, maybe, and they always draw really well. And we have an amazing depth of deathmatch talent in Australia, but it's always, the icing on the cake, the sizzle on the steak. It's never the steak where, myself and other talent in Australia, and obviously people like Jay and the rest of our management team went, you know what? We've all had almost a year off live wrestling in Australia, obviously with the pandemic and the speaking out movement. So we went, okay, it's time to shit or get off the pot when it comes to deathmatch wrestling. None of us are able to go and do a tour in America or do a tour in Japan anytime soon. So we might as well, make something at home that we're proud of and something that we want to perform for.
Oh, absolutely.
Hey,
Jake Hurdle, photographer to the stars.
So is deathmatch wrestling going to be purely only death matches on the cards?
No. I believe in the 3-ring circus, or the ice cream flavor analogy. We all like ice cream, unless you're lactose intolerant. I'm sorry. We all like ice cream, but the flavor of ice cream that you like might not be the same flavor of ice cream that I like. But if I can provide something for everybody, then that's what we're going to do. You're the best. Sorry, my wife bought me a new beer because the beer I poured originally tastes really awful. So we have the best deathmatch wrestlers from all over Australia, but we also have the best heavyweights from all over Australia. Our company is gender neutral, so completely intergender, which is not something you see a lot in Australia. There are a couple of companies up in Sydney who do it quite well. I did see in the opening video some of the people that you've had on the show, Piers, are actually going to appear on our events. So a little bit of something for everybody.
Yeah, I think our main focus was being accessible to a lot of people while not being the same as other promotions that are out there as well. And, of course, obviously the deathmatch side of it, which is something that I think is going to set us apart.
And I think clearly, in the name Deathmatch Downunder, that your product is going to be a predominantly adult-themed targeted for adults only. You're not going to be exactly going and doing kids parties or kids shows where it's, this is going to be adult storylines. Do you know what direction and what talent that you guys have and where you see this sort of going from the start and where it can lead to for you guys?
Most definitely. So yes, it's a mature aged event, but it's not like, good evening, Adam. It's not like some of the other over 18 shows in the country where it's just an excuse to drop the C-bomb and put on really vulgar, relatively offensive storylines. Like, the biggest issue that deathmatch wrestling has had in Australia is it's a bait and switch where it'll be advertised as family-friendly entertainment, and then whatever promotion will go out and do something really violent and really cutting edge. But there are kids in the crowd.
Yeah.
A big thing that we've always said, even since before we actually set up the promotion, when we were just talking about it, is setting clear expectations and then delivering on those expectations. So putting deathmatch in the name, no one's coming thinking that they're going to see bubblegum wrestling or, wrestling at your local RSL with the fake Undertaker and everyone's trying to, go to WWE. It's a violent, adult-orientated promotion that's not designed to insult anybody's intelligence. It's not designed to, be so far-fetched that it's outside of the realm of believability. It's very grounded in, the roots of wrestling that I'm a fan of. Like, I'm a massive fan of US independent wrestling. Got to perform there a few years ago. But, I'm a massive Japanese wrestling fan. And that's where I've always drawn my inspiration from. And with a couple of exceptions, everything is very reality-based, very simple, very easy to understand. Even if you don't speak the language, most people can pick up Japanese wrestling pretty quickly. Yeah. The same thing. Like, we're not just targeting a Melbourne audience, and we need our wrestling to be accessible for everybody, not just in Australia, but worldwide.
Yeah. So, I mean, our main thing was when we started this, or even before we started this, our main thing was to be as transparent as we could and as upfront with who we are and what we're going to do forward. It's one of our main core parts of who we are. And I think if you're going to buy a ticket for an event called Deathmatch Downunder, for a promotion called Deathmatch Downunder, I think you know what's coming. Yeah. So it's a really good starting point,
But the other side of that, Jay, is something that you've been working on, is what happens if someone isn't aware of what the content's going to be. Like, we have
let's
people
face it,
who
some people can be complete idiots.
That and like violence and gore can be triggering. It can be genuinely triggering, but we do have people who are like mental health first aid trained and kind of mental trauma trained at the shows. I know it's something we can't announce just yet. It's like 99.9% done. But working on some sensory stuff as well for people who, may find it a little bit overwhelming. We have those things in place to take care of those fans, because we are putting on such an edgy product and such a, in some realms you could consider it offensive, but such an edgy, such a full-on product that has a lot of violence and blood and guts and gore. We still want to be able to point and go, hey, look, we're actually trying to take care of not only our athletes, but our fans as best we can as well. So it's a safe space for everybody. Not, hey, come watch this show and go home and have fucking nightmares for a month, because that doesn't do anything for anybody.
That doesn't make anyone's time good. And that's what it's all about, is making whoever comes to our shows have a really good time, because they know what's coming, and they go home happy. That's what we intend on delivering.
Oh, absolutely. And do you think do other deathmatch companies or companies that do death matches, are they doing the same thing overseas, like from what your experiences has been, Joel? As far as like the mental health trained nurse and and having the sensory thing, or is it more just like we're putting on the show, that's it?
Well, it's different all over the world, to be honest. But like I said, wrestling all over the world for the most part has been done for 7 months. Like Melbourne's first show back was last weekend, and we hadn't had a show since March. So we've been 9 months in the hole, and so much has changed in wrestling in the last 9 months. So whether or not other promotions worldwide are doing it, like the US is lucky they got to still run some shows through the pandemic, mostly deathmatch companies, because it was their summer and it's just easier to run shows outside during a pandemic.
Yeah.
But we kind of, full disclosure, we weren't meant to launch now. We were meant to launch back in May. But the pandemic obviously stopped that. But the company that we would have launched in May looks vastly different to the company that we've launched now. So many things have happened in wrestling.
Still would have been called Deathmatch Downunder. But all of the stuff that happened throughout the speaking out movement in
Black
wrestling,
Lives Matter, and
all those sort of things led us to start going over what we were doing with a fine-tooth comb and saying, how can we make this be the safest space that it can be for those who intend to come to our shows? Not only the people who come to our shows, but also for our athletes as well. In that we are progressive, but also we're doing it the right way moving forward. And I think historically, wrestling hasn't been doing that. I mean, obviously, otherwise these stories wouldn't be coming out. And,
absolutely.
So to move forward progressively was something that we had to actually sit back for a second and go, hey, let's go through, let's, put these sort of things into our codes of conduct and things of that nature, just to enable things to be a little bit more safer moving forward.
We're a brand new promotion, and we have the benefit of being able to start fresh and lay the groundwork of what we want as a wrestling promotion from all sides. Thank you, Jackson. From all sides, from content to backstage to the way we present ourselves on the internet to how we're distributed worldwide. Like we have the benefit of being able to start from scratch and then do that. And we've been really lucky to partner up with amazing people like yourself to be able to kind of have these conversations and explain kind of where it all comes from, because it is, a lot of information coming out all at once. Chuck asked a question about death matches. I'll answer that because I feel bad because he asked it like 6 minutes ago. Thank you. I love death matches. Has anyone other than myself tried electric fences around the ring? Jesus.
He's hardcore. He's hardcore.
As long as there's no water anywhere, because I don't kind of want to get turned into a superconductor. I do electric fences. Like, I've touched electric fences before. Setting them up around a ring sounds like an incredibly arduous task. But yeah, sure, why not? Sounds like fun.
Kind of sounds fun.
Didn't they try and do something like that in CZW in the early days? They tried to one of the early cage of deaths. I think they tried to set up like an electricity or something.
Well, yeah, Zandig used to be an electrician in his 9-to-5 job, so he always used to wire the exploding stuff back in the day. And yeah, him and Ian Rotten tried to do like an exploding cage match, but it just looked like somebody set off party poppers.
Yeah. Yeah, that was disappointing. But I remember the match actually, and it was I think that was it was an outside match. I think was it?
I vaguely think it was. I think it was a Tournament of Death or an
Yeah.
anniversary show. I do remember seeing it because he also tried to press Ian Rotten off the top of the cage, and Ian Rotten has a lead ass, and it didn't work. But
But obviously, you mentioned, Joel, that you've been a professional wrestler for a little while now. Jay, do you have a background as a wrestler, or are you more of from the management side of things in the business?
I'm from the music industry.
Okay.
The reason Joel and I became pals was because my band played a Wrestle Rock event, and which is held in Melbourne, where they do wrestling at the same time as having rock bands. And so my band at the time did that, and Joel and I became chums from that. So, and we just, through having these sort of discussions and knowing what each other likes, we came to it. He knew that I had a history of enjoying wrestling, but my strengths lie in human resources, in management, in the logistical side of putting together an event, and also just being that sort of being able to sit on a committee of people and actually run things a little bit.
He brings a lot of experience that is different to. So there's what, 6 people in our committee, 5 people in our committee. 5, thank you. But we all come from vastly different experiences. Like, I've been a wrestler for 17 years now, but what I know is wrestling. I started training when I was 11 years old. I had my first match when I was 13. Like, I grew up around the business, and I've seen it evolve, but all I know is the business. And having people like Jay and Erin, who's an apology tonight, coming from such vast backgrounds, working in, whether it be, live music and national touring, or community radio and social media, having people from all different kind of areas of media and industry gives us kind of that multi-pronged approach for what we've been doing, and how, for some reason, whatever we're doing seems to be working.
Yeah, it means that everyone's brings their own thing to the table when we're sitting talking, as management committee, or if we've got issues and stuff like that, we're coming at it from different experiences. Joel can bring his knowledge of wrestling and stuff like that. I can bring my knowledge of entertainment, my knowledge of management, and how it works in that sort of field. Erin can bring her knowledge of community engagement, which is why they're an amazing person for our community engagement side of things. Everyone's got their own experiences, which means everyone brings a unique view and unique take on everything.
And you're getting different perspectives, like, consistently as well, so it's ever evolving, and I think that's one thing. And I think in pro wrestling, for a lot of companies, there's a lot of people that are so similar, and that could obviously lead to destructions of companies and companies going under, because there's so much ego in the world of pro wrestling, right?
Yeah, so it leaves blind spots, and that's the big issue.
And when you have egos all around and everyone's the same, it's just like, who am I going to cut first? You know what I mean? Like, whose legs are going to be taken out? But if you have that difference, it's like everyone has their own specialty field that they're the subject matter expert of, so to speak.
Exactly, and it's good to have people with such a diverse range of experience to call you on your bullshit when you're wrong. Like, everyone's held incredibly accountable. Everyone is very humble, because if anyone does get too big for their britches, or has an idea that doesn't line up with what the voice of the promotion is, you get told. And it's not,
but it's not being told in a an asshole kind of way. It's because
I say it in an asshole kind of way.
Yeah, but not to be terse, Joel, but we have to sometimes, as I said before, come at it from different viewpoints. I've got a strength in human resources, which means that I'm able to talk to that sort of stuff. Joel's got a strength in being an asshole, so he can come at that way. So,
but Joel, being 17 years in the business, you said you started training at age 11 and then had your first match at 13. Did you have a relative in the business? How did you get started so young? And mate, has it been a consistent ride since then?
So I fell in love with wrestling in the mid-90s, same as everybody. WCW was my thing for the international. God damn it, Aaron. For the international viewers, May not know how hard it was to fuck's sake. May not know how hard it was. G'day, lads. To watch wrestling in Australia. WWF and WCW used to be really hard to watch. So the only way I used to be able to watch WCW was stay up till 2:00 in the morning and watch it on Channel 9.
Yeah.
So I started watching wrestling, in 97. And my mum thought I was going to grow out of it and tried to get me to play every sport under the sun to try and get me out of wrestling. And still obsessed with wrestling, trying to give my friends power bombs on the playground in primary school and that kind of stuff.
Nice.
Couldn't do a power bomb because I wasn't strong enough. But we then saw an ad in the paper for a local training school here in Melbourne. And they were doing juniors classes at the time. And Mum said, cool, I'm going to take you down to practice. You're going to get your ass whooped and you're never going to want to go back. Mum took me down to practice. I got the shit beaten out of me and I went, this is amazing. And haven't looked back since. There were other juniors there, some who were still wrestling, most of whom who have retired now. In hindsight, it was way too young to be taking bumps. Like my body wasn't fully developed and I've got, long-lasting injuries from taking bumps before my body was developed. But it's been an incredible ride. I was on the shelf for, almost 4 years, and have only returned at the start of this year. I had a very serious shoulder injury. I tore my labrum almost completely. And public health, waiting for shoulder surgery was a pain in the ass. But I used that time to kind of focus more on the back of house stuff and became a producer for a big company here in Melbourne for a number of years as well, and learnt, more doing that in terms of how to run a successful wrestling company. And I owe a lot of the success that we're experiencing now from kind of, the hard lessons we had to learn as that company grew. So, it was a very, I wore a lot of different hats in wrestling, but it was good to kind of come back in January and I only got 3 matches in before the pandemic shut everything down. So chomping at the bit to get back to it, but it's been really, really cool.
And when did you decide deathmatch wrestling was what you wanted to dive into?
So I was really lucky to watch the last few ECW pay-per-views as they happened. So I was, 9 or 10, 11 years old and got to catch ECW kind of live. And then PCW, which was the promotion I trained with. PCW was the promotion that I was training with, and they were doing it's 5:25 a.m. here in Ohio, and I've had a pot of coffee so far, so don't get pissed if I keep asking questions and posting things. Please ask as many questions as you want.
Do for it, Chuck.
I've been chatting to one of my best friends currently in Ohio, and I'll probably finish this interview to 1 million messages from him because it's about time he gets up from work. But PCW at the time and Australian wrestling at the time was kind of the most popular stuff was emulating ECW.
Yeah.
So the top guys in the country, guys like Lobo and Spike Steel and TNT, are all having Chucky Chaos, Ricky Diamond, are all having these, walk and brawl, chair, table, ladder heavy 25-minute bloodbath main events. That was the style in 2000 and 2001. So
Absolutely.
Once I discovered live wrestling, the first show I went to, I saw someone get given a sit-down powerbomb off the second rope covered in thumbtacks. And then the second show I went to, because Mum said, you're only going to one live wrestling show. And I went to that show and I won the raffle and won tickets to the next show. And then I went to the next show and I saw Armageddon, John Howarth, Jay, for a music reference, chokeslam Lobo through a flaming table.
Yeah.
And we were front row for that. And I went, that's fucking great. So what happened, because as we were discussing off air, good evening. As we were discussing off air with kind of the history of deathmatch wrestling in Australia, the houses in 2001, 2002 were going up as the violence went up. And it all built to a crescendo for a show called Carnage in September of 2002. And they drew 1,200 people to the Roeville Community Centre. And the main event was a no-rope barbed wire Taipei 40,000 reigning thumbtack deathmatch between Lobo and Mad Dog. And great fucking match. And the feud had built to it. Like, they drew a huge house. UWA from Sydney came down and invaded. Great fucking show. But it was promoted as family entertainment. So there were a lot of kids in the crowd. Even by today's standards, it was a pretty bloody death match. It's on YouTube on an unlisted link. If I can find it, I'll send it to you, Piers, but please don't make it public. You can put up screenshots and stuff, but don't make it public.
No,
because I don't want it to come down.
No, please send it. Yeah.
But I was front row for that and thought it was the greatest fucking thing ever. But a couple of wrestlers who weren't a part of the promotion at the time and didn't agree with death matches and the bait and switch and that kind of stuff took it to the media. So the Herald Sun here in Melbourne got a hold of it. Today Tonight, which is kind of like 60 Minutes in the US, got a hold of it and ripped it to shreds. Called it organized barbarism.
I remember this. This. Yes. It was major fucking news, dude. Like, the people were going absolutely nuts. Like, from memory, like, did someone get sprayed with blood, or like someone politician's son or grandson got bled on or some shit?
Exactly. And someone got bled on in the crowd. They went on TV and explained bleeding and called it organized barbarism and sadism and all that kind of stuff. And it almost killed the company. The houses went from 1,200 people to 80 people in 3 weeks.
Fuck.
Yeah, it just killed it.
And so that was the big fucking X across deathmatch wrestling for a really long time. And every time exactly. And every time, companies do come and do a little bit more deathmatch, they don't use the word deathmatch. They'll say it's ultraviolent rules, or it's House of Pain, or Hallway of Horrors, or something fucking stupid like that.
Yeah.
And they'll use light tubes and glass and fire and all that kind of shit. They'll just call it something different. So that's how it's kind of trudged along for the last 18 years. Yeah. But ever since seeing that match live, as an 11-year-old going, this is the coolest fucking thing I've ever seen in my life. That was when I went, right, I want to do death matches. And then my mentor, a guy named Heath Fury, was a massive FMW fan. Oh. So I'd stay at his house before shows and we'd just sit and watch. Do you remember the FMW Tokyo Pop DVDs with the really horrible American commentary?
Yes.
John Watanabe?
Yeah.
Yeah, so we'd watch all the FMW Tokyo Pop DVDs. So, and I was barely watching WWE because I was a WCW guy, and this is in the middle of the invasion. So I knew who fucking Hayabusa was before I knew who, too much about Triple H or Shane McMahon.
No way. That's
bullshit. Yeah, so then that's, so I get properly into wrestling, and I go, okay, I want to do that. I want to do the time bomb death match that Onita and Hayabusa did in the cage.
Man, I was in a very similar thing, back, like ECW, we couldn't get here in Australia. And like ECW's last few, shows when that went out, like I remember just going to the video store, getting like ECW, DV, like videotapes back then, and just getting the old shit. Yeah, dude. Yeah. Yeah. I had
the red one, the green one, and the yellow one.
That was the only three I could ever get, and I could know
the only three that got released.
No, but there was also the older ones as well, like just the choke slams, hoodies, and gangsters or some shit. Yeah. Yep. Like I saw that one, and even then, like I got into more of the hardcore indie wrestling, like CZW, XPW around that time, man, and FMW as well. They used to put on some crazy ass shows, and they did a lot of consistent shows as well with the same performers. And I remember seeing like Onita coming out literally much covered in bandages, had to go through a no rope exploding death match, like fucking dildo on a pole, whatever it is, like just match, and he's literally just torn to shreds a week beforehand.
That's it, and that was my introduction to wrestling. That and the super technical WCW cruiserweight stuff. Yes, ordering ECW and CZW tapes from Mat Wars. Mat Wars was the saving grace of Australian wrestling for so fucking long. So Mat Wars you'd either pick it up at a show or he'd post it to you, and Mat Wars would send you a Aaron, don't knock XPW until you've seen enough XPW to knock XPW.
XPW's okay in small doses.
Very small doses, like one match. But Mat Wars would give you a fucking 4-page booklet of all the tapes he had coming in that month, and you'd cash him up or you'd post him a check, and then they'd rock up in the post like 3 weeks later.
See, I had no idea about that, dude. I was like ringing CZW offices and going, I'd like to order Cage of Death 1, 2, and 3, please.
Sure. That'll be where are we?
And I'm like,
Australia.
Is this Sandig? No, brother. So
Yeah, it's totally fucking Xantic.
But Jay, like, you mentioned before you were a wrestling fan as well. Were you, into the deathmatch scene yourself, or like when did you sort of discover deathmatch wrestling?
So deathmatch wrestling of its own's been probably more of a more recent thing for me. Obviously, as me and Joel have become chums, and you can see what he's like. He has exposed me to much. One of the first things that he sent to me over Facebook Messenger was a whole list of BJW matches to watch, and that was kind of a trial by
fire.
yeah, very much so. And I've loved it ever since. I love the art form. I love the storylines that can come out of it when deathmatch wrestling's done well. I know that I've sort of said this before. Is that when deathmatch wrestling's done well, it carries with it a story in ring as well as a story across multiple shows as well. I think that's the best way of doing it, and I think that BJW do that really, really well. It was awesome to sort of watch that sort of stuff. For me, I grew up watching WCW. We had TNT channel on Optus Vision, or Galaxy as it was back then. And I used to get to watch Nitro on Saturday mornings. And I loved that. I was never really a massive WWE guy. Later on, I got a little bit into it, around the CM Punk, Summer of Punk and all that sort of stuff. Brings us sort of up to now. Someone mentioned in the chat about AEW, and I'm a big fan of AEW as well. But mostly I'm following US Indies. Yeah, see, that's it. I feel it's another WCW as well.
To an extent, I think Tony Khan's got more brains than fucking Brad Reagan's or whoever was running the office. But yeah,
yeah, exactly. But so that's my wrestling fandom, I guess. My exposure to wrestling was through WCW. I watched a little bit of ECW growing up as well, when I could. WWE was never a thing for me. And as I said, Joel's introduced me to so much of a wider world of wrestling.
But I think deathmatch wrestling is one of those things that any wrestling fan can enjoy, but it has to be done right.
Absolutely. Absolutely. I mean, what's the point of going and seeing a crap band when you can see a really, really good band? And it's the same with deathmatch wrestling. You can see guys who probably are quite capable in the ring, but there's no story to it. There's no inspiration to what they're doing. And when deathmatch is done right, it's done fucking right.
Yeah, I mean, deathmatch wrestling.
Sorry, you go.
Sorry. No, I was just going to say that there's good deathmatch wrestling and there's bad deathmatch wrestling, just like there's, good, regular wrestling as opposed to bad regular wrestling. You know what I mean? Like it's night and day. Like bad deathmatch wrestling stands out like fucking dog nuts.
Yeah,
exactly. Bad wrestling, regardless of subgenre, can be as damaging to an industry as can be. Like bad comedy wrestling can be super damaging. Good comedy wrestling can be some of the best wrestling you'll ever see. And same thing with bad technical wrestling. Bad technical wrestling looks like two donkeys trying to fuck a doorknob.
Yeah.
Good technical wrestling looks like a fucking fight. And deathmatch wrestling is no different. Deathmatch wrestling, where you build the spectacle and you build the suspense and you build the story and all of the gratuitous violence has a purpose. Some of the best wrestling ever. You go and you ask anyone over the age of 30 what their top 5 WWE matches are. I guarantee you they say Mick Foley, Triple H, Rumble 2000. I don't give a fuck what anybody says. That's a death match.
Dude, I was just about to mention, what about the match that Mick Foley had later on in his career against
Foley and Orton? That's a fucking death match.
Foley and Orton. And the thing was, there was barbed wire boards, there was fucking thumbtacks. Last time I watched fire. Last time I watched a tournament of death, I've seen all those three things in one match as a stipulation, bro. Like, you know what I mean? Like, you can call it extreme, you can call it hardcore, but that level of violence is exactly what's done, on regular deathmatch companies.
Yeah.
Exactly.
You know, and that's the thing. Like, there's a lot of, I think, deathmatch wrestling gets a bad rap because it's got deathmatch. It's like, oh, like that's wrong. But if regular fans really have to understand and appreciate it. Like, yes, there is bad, like as we said before, hack and slash, and guys just walk around doing dumb shit and not making any sense. But if you go and can sit down and watch a good death match, like you go and watch, say, I don't know, like Nick Gage versus
Nick
Matt
Gage and
Tremont.
Nick Gage and RSP from Run Ricky
100%. Yes,
Yeah.
yes. Perfect example of that. Those are two of the best deathmatch wrestlers in the world.
But
And
that
they
match
had an amazing
was
match, and it made
incredibly violent, had an angle behind it, made perfect sense, paid everything off, and set up for the. They're still, Steven, what's up, brother? He's tuning in from Japan. It's definitely
Thanks for
past your
tuning in,
bedtime.
Stephen.
But thank you so much for saying that I'm buff. I've been doing 400 mil curls most of the afternoon.
It's been a good afternoon.
It had all of the makings of a good professional wrestling match, and then was put in a very violent context.
Yeah.
And it'll go down as one of the matches of the year for 2020, 100%.
I 100% agree, and you know what? Ultimately, what did it do? It got the heel over fucking big time. A guy who was probably used to being mainly a babyface most of his career, and then he became the biggest heel in the world, going up against someone like Nick fucking Gage, and then stealing his belt, and and basically saying, go boo that gangster shit. I'll call the police on you, motherfucker. You know what I mean? Like, just being the ultimate snowflake. And then to see, man, I remember I watched that match actually not too long ago, and seeing that reaction from that live crowd was, dude.
That's the first live riot I've seen in almost 20 years.
Dude, I had a buddy of mine who was at the show, and he said it was fucking nuts.
I'm pretty sure Steven would have been at that show as well, actually.
He even said, like, when Nick Gage came out, his entrance, like, he literally, like, he was grabbing motherfuckers and like headbutting it. Like, people in the crowd, he was that hype.
But when the camera cut, there was a riot. A fan fucking threw a punch at Ricky Shane Page.
Yeah. Someone spat on him as well, I think, didn't they?
Yeah, that was at a later show. But yeah, a legitimate riot. There was a shoot brawl between the wrestlers and the punters. Like, wrestling is about suspending disbelief. And I think deathmatch wrestling has that morbid curiosity that makes it easier to suspend. Like, I'm not going to insult anybody's intelligence and say what I'm doing is a shoot. Like, I can fight, but you're not paying to see me come and actually fight someone. You're coming to see me wrestle. But deathmatch wrestling is a lot more, I guess, for lack of a better term, believable to suspend your disbelief.
Yep, it's a lot easier.
You may never take a power bomb. You may never take a lariat. You may never get put in a sharpshooter, but I guarantee you, everyone stepped on a piece of broken glass or a thumbtack at least once.
Yeah,
or scraped up, or Lego, or scraped up against the barbed wire fence with their elbow and hooked their jacket on it. You know, everyone's got that relatable experience that they can then kind of, string together in their head and go, okay, well, if I caught my elbow on that barbed wire fence at a farm when I was 7 and that fucking sucked, that guy getting belly to bellied into a barbed wire board, that must be fucking terrible. Spoiler alert, it's fucking terrible. But
I actually saw I think an interview or something where Jun Kasai was actually saying that. He goes, and the interview asked him, like, what's the premise of a death match? Like, what do you want the crowd to take away from it? What do you want them to understand? And like, how do you get them to be invested? And he goes, it's important that the weapons that we use, they know that pain. And his wife was making this board where she was putting into foam these little knives that they sell for like 100 yen in Japan.
Can we put over that series? Because I know the series you're talking about. Because when people say, I want to know what deathmatch wrestling is, it's on. So here in Australia, it's on SBS On Demand. It's called the Wrestlers. And I think they do TOD. So they do Tournament of Death and cover that, and then they go and do Japanese deathmatch wrestling and follow around.
That's the Viceland.
It's a Viceland documentary where they do like a big 7-part series, because they did Casanova Valentine as well. which is how I found out about Cass, which, you know, inevitably brought him to Australia and kind of kicked this whole thing off. But anyone who wants to know more about Deathmatch Wrestling who's watching should definitely go and check that series out, because it is shot really well and explains the concept so eloquently, like better than I can. So.
And it shows these guys in a different light, you know, and I think a lot of fans would think deathmatch wrestlers are going to be these most violent, aggressive, you know, antisocial type of people. But, you know, to me, I equate deathmatch wrestlers with like musicians, like just cool, humble people that are like, you know, at a deathmatch show, or deathmatch fans are like when you go to a rock show, you know what I mean? Like everyone's just cool, man. They're there for a show. They're not there to be a dick. You know, and I think that's where deathmatch, as I said before a couple of times, it really gets a bad rap because of the label deathmatch, I believe.
Totally. I consider myself a wrestler, but I consider it an art form, and I know Jay does too. Like, it's about pulling an emotion out of a person.
Yeah, it's the same at music, isn't it? You know, you might go to I don't know, pop shows or whatever, and you'll have certain people who are just there to be dicks and stuff like that. But there's, you know, you go to metal shows and stuff like that. Some of the metal dudes that I've met are some of the nicest human beings I've ever met, you know?
Yeah.
And it's exactly the same in deathmatch wrestling, I think. Definitely some of the people that I've met, you know, online through deathmatch wrestling and through, you know, being involved in this company have been some of the nicest people I've ever met online.
Yeah,
I just saw a thing pop up from Callan saying the wrestlers sold me on deathmatch when I was on the fence. I fucking hope so, mate, because you're in the main event in 100 light tube deathmatch in about a month. So I hope you're not on the fence anymore, because you're about to get fucked up.
Are you facing him this match, Joel?
No. So we can run down the card for the first show if you'd like. So our first show is called "And Out Come the Wolves." It is a musical reference that I don't understand, and Jay does. It's a ranted reference. Hang on, Beast All Day. When wrestling fans get turned off by a deathmatch, it reminds me of The Simpsons, where the whole town has to pretend they're offended. There's a burlesque club in town.
Yeah.
And then yes, thank you, Steve. You mean to tell me these simulated fights are dangerous? Well, I never.
That comment wins comment of the night, hands down.
Yeah. That guy gets it, though. That guy gets it.
Steve gets it. It is one of the biggest cheerleaders for deathmatch wrestling on planet Earth. He does a lot of work and is one of the unsung heroes when it comes to getting more people to understand deathmatch wrestling around the world. So I'll give Steve all the props I can. But yeah, Alpha, hang on, Chuck's off. Adios, Chuck.
Later, Chuck. Thanks for tuning in, brother. Jesus Christ, that's a message.
It's all good.
Where's Joel gone?
You know what? Thank you so much for adopting rescue puppies instead of going to a breeder. It's something I'm very passionate about, and we're going to run a show shortly to raise funds for Greyhound Rescue, and that's like 90% confirmed. So when that's done, Piers, I'll send you the press release. But so our first show is called "And Out Come the Wolves." It's a ranted reference that again I don't understand, but we've got a 7-match card that we're pretty happy with, to be honest, and it's undergone a couple of changes. So when we originally wrote the card, we were under border restrictions here in Victoria. Piers, you're from Sydney, correct?
Yeah, that's correct.
So for those of you who aren't in Australia, we were all landlocked. You couldn't go interstate up until a couple of weeks ago. So when we originally wrote the card, it was all with Victorian talent. And then we had a couple of injuries and we had to shuffle stuff around. But in that time, the borders had opened. So we were lucky to be able to kind of start bringing in some interstate talent, which is something we're very passionate about doing. Jay, I don't know if you've got the card up in front of you. Otherwise, I can bring it up.
I don't.
Only because if I try and do it off the top of my head, I will probably spoil a surprise.
Yes.
And I don't want to do that. So.
Yeah, we don't like bait and switch, but we do like surprises.
Yeah. my wife texted me from the lounge room going, "It's a fucking Rancid album." Thanks, babe. Love you.
I am a big fan of your wife, and
believe it or not, me too.
Yeah.
Surprise.
Yeah, very much so.
Right. But okay, well, as you bring that up, you find the undercard. I'll talk about the death matches. So the main event is a 100 light tube death match, first time ever in Australia. between Callum Butcher, who's hanging out in the chats, and Damien Rivers. So Damo has kind of been a deathmatch journeyman through the darker days of deathmatch wrestling in Australia. You know, he's been working, it'd be 5 or 6 years now, and very, very passionate about.
He follows you everywhere, Joel. Follows you everywhere.
God damn it. Fucking Hawker. He is a huge proponent of deathmatch, but was never really given the platform to show his art the way he wants to. Where Callan has kind of gone the other direction and tried his hand at everything, and this is kind of the final frontier for him. And you know, they are both, you know, massive deathmatch fans, both really fucking talented wrestlers.
Incredibly
outside of the context of deathmatch. So we went, okay, Damo's taken an issue to Callan, you know, trying deathmatch. Where, having spoken to Callan, you know, in a lot of detail, I know he's all in on death matches, and this is kind of shit or get off the pot time for him as a wrestler. He's either going to be a deathmatch wrestler, or he's not going to be a wrestler anymore. And it'd be a shame to lose somebody like him if he can't find a spot in this business. And I think he's going to be a great deathmatch worker. So we've given them the platform. They're on top. First time in Australia, 100 light tube deathmatch. So it'll be light tube ropes, light tube bundles, the whole 9 yards. So they're headlining. The other, so 7-match show, 3 death matches, variety. The other death match is a tag team barbed wire board death match. Team of Raw Beef, 2 Crazy and RXSP.
Well done.
Excellent, thank you. They need easier names. Look,
yeah,
but they're taking on Mad Dog, who is the guy who's been flying the. You know, Mad Dog was in that death match that I watched 18 years ago.
Yeah.
He's done more freedoms tours than I've had matches. And he's the one deathmatch wrestler that everyone all over the world knows from Australia. Yeah. And Heavyset Violence Michael Weaver from South Australia, who again flies the deathmatch flag in South Australia when no one else wants to bar a deathmatch. And Weaver's a great strong style Kings Road wrestler as well. I'll put it out there, he's got the hardest lariat in the country. So that's a tag team barbed wire board. Yeah, and the banging is theme music. We have a playlist on Spotify with all our entrance music. There's a plug for you. But that's a tag team barbed wire board death match, and then there's my match, and Jay can talk about that because I don't like putting myself over.
So yeah, the smash hit Joel Bateman, ladies and gentlemen, right in front of you, going up against Guido from San Jose, California. For the UGWA Total Violence Championship in a cut can and gusset plate board death match. So yeah, my friend Joel here really hates his body and really
thanks, mate. Well, all right. So I'll explain the story of the match to you because
let's go with the story because you can put yourself over. Come on.
Well, that and we kind of drew straws on the stipulation, and I think I got the shit end of the deal. I would have much rather do 100 light tubes than a fucking gusset plate board. Having done gusset plates and know how bad they suck. But so, as you've obviously gotten through, you know, our almost 45-minute chat, I believe that deathmatch wrestling. So Australian wrestling, again, like you only have to watch the opening video of your podcast to see how many different platforms Australian wrestlers are at the very top. Lucha Libre, we have Australian Suicide, top of AAA. In Japan, Dingo Cannon runs Ryuku Pro. Charlie Evans, you know, has a standing off of Sendai Girl whenever she wants. Alex Lee lives there. TMDK, need I say more? WWE, there's a bunch of Australians, you know, at the top there. In the UK, people like Sean Custom, Mark Davis, Kyle Fletcher. So deathmatch wrestling is the only kind of subgenre where Australia doesn't get a lick. I think that we're ready to, you know, compete on the world stage. I've been very public about that for a while. Guido holds the UGWA Total Violence title. UGWA's just gone on IWTV to great reception. KG and Trevino and all those guys do amazing work. In California, they put on some of the best deathmatch shows on the West Coast. Guido has their deathmatch title. He moved here in January and happened to get pinned down due to the pandemic. But he's here for good now with the UGWA belt. So it's this amazing lightning in a bottle where I've got an opportunity to take the goblet of fire, for lack of a better term, and go, look, we belong on this world stage. I can sit here and say that Australian deathmatch wrestler is as good as anybody else, any other deathmatch wrestler on the face of the planet until I'm fucking blue in the face. But no one's going to believe me until I've got something to prove it. The Agua Total Violence title is my way of proving it.
Yeah.
I'd agree. I think seeing that, being the Australian and taking one of those titles, the Agua title, it'll definitely put Australian deathmatch wrestling on the scene. And I think that, with everything that, Australia has, as how far Australia has come, I should say, in the world of professional wrestling, and you said it yourself, Joel, where Australians have sort of started to go across the world and conquer. Deathmatch is, there's no Australian deathmatch guys that, I've seen in the US and stuff like that from shows that I've seen standing out. And I think there's, from obviously our conversation here and looking more into Deathmatch Down Under, I've found there's quite a few deathmatch guys here in Australia that are ready to go.
Yep, and you're going to meet them all.
Yay!
But this guy down here, he thinks that he's going to be able to take that Agua Total Violence Championship, and I've got to be honest, I'm right behind him the whole way. I think that he's definitely got the best shot, and I mean, what a massive thing it'll be for Australian wrestling to have that that American championship, especially in a deathmatch championship, in a deathmatch promotion in Australia.
Oh, so many guys say I didn't know there was wrestling in Australia. We got fucking 25 million people in this country. Our country is the same size as the United States. It's just a bunch of red dirt in the middle, so no one lives there. We are very easy to ignore all the way over here on our big giant rock. So I'm either going to take that belt and make the noise I want to with it, or die trying. That's how it'll go. There's some actually really cool comments I just noticed because I talk too much.
Sorry, I was just getting into talking with you, actually. So let's go.
No.
Facebook user. I'm going to struggle watching those cut can spots. I'm scared.
We did a media day a couple of weeks ago where we made up a little mock cut can board, and the mock cut can board fucking sucked. So a full board of cut cans is going to suck. Hawko was meant to be my second in this fucking death match. He says, please don't die. Look, me dying is directly responsible for how you take care of me. I'm a 7 foot thunder. Johnny Parks runs a wrestling promotion, I'm pretty sure, in North Carolina. But Johnny Parks lives in the USA. Ask JXT, because JXT caught up with him. 7 foot thunder was one of the first giants of Australian wrestling in the mid-90s.
He was, man. He was. I remember going to shows and seeing him.
Yeah.
So, all right. So we've gone over the death matches of this card. What are some of the other matches that the fans can expect to see on the?
So opening the card up, we have one of Melbourne's best up-and-coming wrestlers. He's been in the game for long enough. His name is Richie Taylor. And anyone who's ever attended any Melbourne wrestling promotions knows that guy and knows how good he is. And he's going up against one of Australia's best exports, Shazza McKenzie. Well known for, being an indie darling over in America. AEW, WWE, she's done it all. Shimmer. Yeah, all those sort of things. She's an incredibly talented human. And I can't wait to see those two go at it. I think that's going to be a hell of a match. We've also got, as Joel was speaking about before, Blacklisted, JXT and Fox going up against Curtis Day and Avery in round 1 of our tag team tournament.
So we are crowded. We've got 3 belts across Deathmatch Downunder. Jay, are they at your house or are they at Callan's house?
They are at someone else's house.
Excellent. So we've got tag team titles and we're crowning those first. 8 teams across our first 3 shows. And it's super cool to have Avery working with us. She did a lot with Stardom. She went over and did the 5-star Grand Prix in 2019. Obviously, COVID stopped her going back again this year, but she's one of the most versatile wrestlers in the country. And I don't think anyone really, we've only just scratched the surface of how good she is. So it's cool to kind of have her in the tag team title tournament. Curtis Day, I think. Hello, Piers Austin.
Hello, Facebook user.
Hello, Facebook user.
Curtis
Click the link
Day
above so we can see your details, guys.
There you go. Curtis Day is a breakout guy who's worked for a lot of independents here, and it's nice to be able to give him a shot too. And something I'll talk about quickly, like we talked about obviously everything we're doing, but there's only 15 tickets available still as of an hour ago for this show on the 16th of January in Melbourne. So if you live in Melbourne and you haven't bought tickets, buy fucking tickets because they're going to be gone by the end of the week. And I can't wait to put up a big poster that says sold out, fucking huge letters. But when we looked at our distribution, we went, do we want to kind of run our own video on demand and try and monetize it a little bit more? Or do we want to kind of go the other way and try and get as many eyes on it as possible? And we decided dollars versus exposure. We went with exposure. So we're very, very lucky to partner up with IWTV, and we're one of the first Australian wrestling promotions to partner with IWTV. And they've been so amazing and so forthcoming with everything, and so receptive to a lot of the crazy ideas that we've got. Anyone who watched the shows that they had on over the weekend, you would have seen a couple of preview commercials for our first show that premieres on the 28th of January on IWTV. But when we wrote this card, we went, we need to have a little bit of everything. We need to have the deathmatch guys. We need to have the local guys who, you know, we know could perform on a world stage and need that platform. And then we went, we need guys who are familiar to not only an Australian audience, but an American audience as well. And people like Shazza McKenzie and JXT, who had a great run in Impact, Game Changer, Wrestle Pro, has done 2 really long tours of the US.
Yeah.
You know, he's very well known over there as an Australian export. So it's really cool to be able to host these guys on their home turf and kind of be able to reestablish that connection to the other side of the world as well. And it has people who are tuning in from the States who don't know who any of the fuck any of us are. A little bit of relatability as well. Yeah.
And then the final match, if I may, is the other of the first round tag team tournament matches that we're having on this this first event, and that is Misspent Youth, Murdoch and Aisha up against Aiden Miller and Tyson Baxter. So
do you want to elaborate on who those 4 people are for those who
no,
have no?
You are quite the talker tonight.
Yeah, it's because you stopped drinking and I didn't. So Tyson and Aiden were tag team champions on a trampoline before they were 10 years old. But Tyson Baxter is a staple with Melbourne City Wrestling here in Melbourne. Aiden Miller, probably the top guy who's not wrestling for MCW at the moment. And Aisha and Murdoch are 2 both really amazing young talents. They're so criminally young. Every time they tell me how old they are, my fucking knees hurt.
Yeah.
So that's going to be a great match.
I mean, yeah.
But you're not taking bumps, Jay.
Well, no, I'm not. they're still very young.
But there's another couple of matches as well that Caveman Ugg, who is a PWG stalwart, will be in action. Unfortunately, we have had to make a schedule change and we don't have his opponent yet. If the show sells out, we might announce his opponent, but we'll announce his opponent before the end of the year. I guarantee you it'll be amazing. And there's a couple of other surprises that will be. Hey, Brent, thanks for waking up.
Brent Lambert in the United States. Thanks for tuning in, brother.
And there's a couple other surprises as well that I will not spoil here, but trust me, they're worth tuning in for.
Absolutely. And they're worth buying your tickets. There's 15 left.
Guys, you need to get your hands on tickets. If I was in Melbourne, I would be at the show, but you can bet your asses I'm going to be watching on independent wrestling TV when this show is on, and I can't wait. And guys,
we have a promo code for IWTV as well. So if you haven't signed up to IWTV yet, it helps us out a whole bunch because we've been ranting and raving to IWTV for months and months and months and said that Australian wrestling fans are some of the most passionate wrestling fans in the world, but we need to be able to prove that. So if you haven't already signed up for IWTV, you can sign up to IWTV. It's only $10 Australian a month. And if you use the code DMDU, you get 5 days free. And it also sends a message to IWTV that shows them that Australian wrestling fans are just as fucking passionate as we've been telling them that they are.
And seriously,
send me the promo code and I'll tweet it out as well. I'll tweet on Facebook.
It's some of the best money that you can spend on the internet, really, to be honest.
They've got something like 800 fucking shows.
Yeah, and some of the best. We're just speaking of deathmatch wrestling. Some of the best deathmatch promotions out there. Some of the best pure wrestling promotions out there. Some of the really good US independent promotions. Black Label Pro. In terms of deathmatch, ICW no holds barred, no peace. You know, over
ICW no peace, game changer, Zona 23 out of Mexico,
IWA
IWA Mid South, Time Bomb Pro. They've got a whole lot of the old CZW back catalog up there. Lucha Libre Vanguardia. I'm pretty sure Rise from the UK is up there. Freedoms, Big Japan. Like, if you like
H2O.
wrestling, H2O. Oh, I'm so mad. Sorry, Matt. I'm sorry I forgot to put you over. If you like wrestling, you don't have to like deathmatch wrestling. If you like wrestling, there is so much bullshit on there that like you can just always jump in and watch. Yes, No Peace is sick. I fucking love their show.
That show over the weekend was fucking awesome. Absolutely awesome.
Mr. or Mrs. Lachlan, thank you very much for the support. I'll do my absolute best.
Guys, we've just passed that 1 hour mark. I do want to be respectful of Joel and Jay's time. But guys, before I wrap up, I just want to thank both Jay and Joel for giving up a portion of their evening to come and shoot the shit with me, to talk about some deathmatch wrestling, to talk about Deathmatch Down Under. Guys, please make sure that you check our Instagram, our Facebook, and our Twitter accounts, because we'll post out the promo code for IWTV. Help these guys out. Help yourselves out and go watch some more independent wrestling. All right, guys, come on. Like, get off the fucking toilet. It's time to shit or watch. I don't know. I can't think of it.
It's time to shit or watch independent wrestling.
It's time to shit or get off the toilet is what I meant to say. But go,
I want to
go
do both.
Why? Dude, I do it all the time. I just angle the TV. But bro, anyway, guys, thank you for everyone for tuning in. And guys, thank you so much for giving up your time. It's been great. Guys, please make sure our next show, I'll have a show coming this Saturday at 11 a.m. Australian time. So make sure to tune in for that. I'll announce my guest. All right. In that. Anyway, guys, catch you later.